It's showtime. Yay. I don't know if anybody
at the Apollo.
I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, we'll start non-spoiler. We'll wait for people
I
to come
cannot
in.
wait, Jesse, to get these feelings out. Yes.
Oh God.
It is interesting how, I mean, that makes for a better live show, you know?
Yeah.
When we
I'll let you guys talk first about your feelings.
Well, we'll start non-spoiler too for anybody that wants to. Hello. For anybody, I waved like at the chat area, like it's directing me over, like they see me from over there. Hello. Yeah, we'll start non-spoiler, just kind of let people trickle in. And also for anybody that just wants general thoughts, we can give general thoughts. Maybe we can mention how we all personally rank them. I think all of us still like when I say all of us, I mean us three, like the first one the most.
Yes.
Agree.
So I'm curious for people that are joining the chat, let us know and you can include the novellas too. So of the 5, which has been your favorite? For me, the first one, Skyward, has been my favorite. And then I think Read On is second place. I really liked Read On. So
thank you.
What about you, Nigel?
Nigel, what did you think?
I moved my lemon Oreos up here, and that's what he's trying to get. So rude. He skim reads, so he doesn't count. That's. I didn't even think about putting the novellas in my like ranking because Skyward's still my favorite, and then I would just say Starsight, Cytonic. But now if I put in the novellas, I still think I would say Skyward. Skyward, Starsight, Read On, Sunreach, Cytonic.
Cytonic's the very bottom for you also?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, it's still like a 3.5, but it's still the bottom of all of them.
Really quick, I've seen a Doom Slug plushie. They're very cute.
Someone sent me a link. I want it.
Oh my God.
I think there's a picture of Sanderson holding one. Sunreach. Okay, I saw when I did my review of the 2 novellas, someone really, I think it was my review of it, or it might have been my wrap up, but someone's like, it is the single worst thing I've read by Sanderson.
Sunreach?
Somebody thought it was like their least favorite thing. And I was like, okay, that's
fair.
My least favorite has been not a part of this series, but what is it called?
Can I guess what it is?
Yeah. Go ahead. You know what it is.
Steelheart.
Yes. That's my least favorite thing I've read. But
Jesse said,
I've had it. I watched you.
Is Steelheart middle grade or YA?
It's YA.
Okay, I haven't read it.
I need to read it still. I have it on my shelf, but I just think of you every time I see it, Elle, because you hate it.
Yay, that makes me so happy.
Aww.
I hope your niece loves it. This is a series that when I think about passing book recommendations on to my nieces, I definitely think of this one.
Yeah.
Chicken nuggets. Chicken nuggets are good.
I love
chicken nuggets.
I don't know what that's a reference. Oh. Okay, so you also really like the novellas. We will definitely mention. Yeah, I'll put a banner on the screen too, so that people know when we're officially chatting spoilers.
I love it. Nigel.
Okay. It's kind of where Jess is at. Jessie is trying to hold in her disdain.
Yeah, to be fair, I did not read the novellas because I was worried I wasn't going to finish it all in time for the live show if I had included the novellas, but I should probably read them given how much people are seeming to enjoy them, except for the next comment. They really disliked novellas. But besides them, but a lot of people seem to like them, so I should probably read them, but I don't know anymore. I don't know.
Thank you.
Your winter
Midnight Moonlight. I have made my shelves winter edition, so it's greens and blues mostly, with some whites and stuff mixed in. I thought it was really cute too. I thought it was precious. Wow, favorite is Cytonic. I'm so excited to be chatting. I think the series is so interesting because people feel so differently about each individual book. Hello. Yep, that's how I felt too. Oh, that's fun. I got mine 2 days ago, right? Not yesterday, the day before.
Yeah.
And then I read it basically. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I finished it yesterday.
Yeah.
So, oh man, that stinks.
Oh, that does stink.
Ugh.
What?
When does it come out in Australia? I'm curious.
Can you still listen to audiobook, or is it? I always think that's so weird.
Yeah,
how
the
there's
different
things accessible.
release dates.
I would think at least I mean, not saying that it is, but I don't understand why we don't at least have ebooks available.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with this.
Yes.
Just in general, like seeing
More people than Dispensa.
Thought the novellas were good. Jorgen's your least favorite character.
Oh no, I like Jorgen.
I will say was it in Redawn? I was like, maybe because I had listened to them all, I was tired of hearing jerk face. I'm like, oh, I want a new call sign.
I know. I only started trying to do that. Like this is the first time I've switched it for this season. I've never done that before.
Thank you. Lay down. Thank you.
Well, let's give our non-spoiler thoughts. How we each individually rank, and then if we've read the novellas, how we would probably place them as well. So, Jess, do you want to go first?
Wait, I heard what you said, but I didn't hear what you said.
It's very late for Jess. So, how do you rank them,
Okay.
including the novellas?
My rank would be Skyward, then. Well, now people are making me reconsider. I said Skyward, Starsight, Redawn, Sunreach, Cytonic. I'm gonna stick there. Even though I really did like Redawn, but I'm gonna stick with that ranking.
And then Jessie has only read the 3 main novels.
Correct. No novellas for me, but Skyward by far is my favorite. Then Starsight, then Cytonic, much lower.
So I, as far as the main books in the series, I like Skyward just like Jess and Jessie the most, and then Cytonic, and then Starsight. But if I add the novellas, I think Redawn is second for me. I like both Sunreach. I mean, I think I might like Sunreach more than Cytonic. But then I would say Starsight's at the bottom for me. But it's funny, the reasons when we get into spoilers, like the reasons why. Can you give non-spoiler reasons why you feel about how you feel for each of the books? Well, I want to start with Jessie because Jessie has the.
You want to start with me?
Yeah. Give your non-spoiler reasons why Cytonic is at the bottom for you.
Oh my god. All right, I don't want to be too negative. All right, so I finished the book and I rated it 3.5. And then upon further reflection, I lowered it to 3. And then upon further reflection, I lowered it to 2. And the reason
you went down a half star and then you went down a whole.
And then I went down because like talking to you guys about it like made me angry. So any book that like actively enrages me, like I don't think that should be 3 stars. So the reason is not, yes, okay, exciting for you. That is why it was not exciting for me. Cytonic to me felt like it was a book for reveals that continued to get more and more ridiculous, out there, abstract maybe. It's not characters, it's not plot, it's like fundamental world building aspects that I just can't stand. And I think it's because it started as a sci-fi series. It started, Skyward was like very much, I feel like, rooted, grounded, sort of in reality. I mean, there were some like mystery aspects. We got some sort of like out there aspects a little bit teased to us, but for the most part, it felt like sci-fi that was kind of grounded in reality. However, I mean, Starsight, I think, kind of started teasing that it was going to be a little bit different than sci-fi. It was going to lean a little bit more fantasy. But Cytonic just took it to a whole nother level for me. It is full on fantasy at this point. There is absolutely nothing sci-fi about it except that it has alien species and is in outer space. I don't like that I was expecting a sci-fi series and it is now like full on just like crazy out there fantasy. I just can't stand.
No, it's funny because I think some of the reveals feel almost borderline classic sci-fi reveals.
No!
Jesse totally disagrees, which we'll get into in the spoilers. So I 100% am with Jesse as far as I think the first book feels more grounded in reality, and then it definitely does get more out there. But for me, what she's experienced after book 3, I experienced after book 2. In book 2, I'm like, oh, we're going really out there, and so I kind of missed the more grounded in reality feeling from Skyward, but I felt a little bit more like we weren't getting hints. I felt like we were already thrown in the deep end with Starsight. So with Cytonic, I was expecting it. But I know what Jesse's talking about because when we tried not to chat too much before our live show about it, but the analogy that I have is if any of you have watched the Netflix Daredevil, I love the first season, and then the second season focuses on the Hand, and I'm like, I don't care. And then the third season is back to like crime and these corrupt people, and I'm like, this is what I like. And so I feel her when it comes to something starting more grounded and then gets more fantastical. Yeah. But I think the difference for me too is that I find sci-fi that pretends that it's more science-based than it actually is. I find that more frustrating because at some point I'm like, it's just magic. It is magic. Like these things. So the concepts of like traveling from planet to planet or being in space or those sorts of things, at some point I'm like, it's just, I mean, it is fantasy, right? Like it's just like Jess said in our chat, aside from this, she was saying at some point it's just like you teleport. It's what it kind of comes down to. So, but yeah, it looks like a lot of you feel similar that it's high fantasy.
It's like if you're okay with the answers, like if you kind of just like go with it, then it's a fun series. But for me, it's just too like the reveals that we got in Cytonic, and we can talk spoilers eventually, and I'll tell you exactly which ones. But it's like they're just so ridiculous. It's so absurd. Like, what are we doing?
I think that this kind of captures what you feel.
Yeah, like it's not trying to be like future Earth, like sci-fi where we could be potentially in the future. This is like completely made up fantasy, whatever.
This is what I was teasing Jesse about. Jesse likes the movie Interstellar, and I feel like Interstellar does the same thing, except for
Interstellar is incredible. I will take no slander.
But what's funny is like I was frustrated with Interstellar because I felt like within one movie it went from somewhat science-based to just like magic, basically. And why are you shaking your finger at me?
It's science, okay?
We agree with this. All three of us agree with this. We'll get to that also. We'll let Jess express her feelings about why Cytonic is where it is. Non-spoiler for now still.
Yes. Just a quick question. Can you hear me okay? I didn't. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So Skyward being the best one, I think something I loved about it at the beginning was the group interact. Like, I always love a kind of found family ragtag group or people put together in a situation and they like have to get along eventually. I like love that setup. So I love that in Skyward. And yeah, I guess it just was a smaller feel and it felt more intimate and just the different, relationships. And we got more. I liked Mbot better in the first one and everything. And then Starsight, on my reread, I realized how much I missed that, but I still like it expands the world, but she still almost had a little bit of that with the people that she met on Starsight, the people like she was flying with and stuff. But in my mind, I was like, okay, well, she's gonna be going back. We're gonna be getting her back to the crew. And then in Cytonic, she still is like on this solo journey. And I'm like, no, I want, especially after reading the novellas and getting to see what they were up to. I was like, no, I wanted her back with the crew. And I feel like I don't feel as much as like Jessie. Like I feel like, oh, it's just very, loose sci fantasy. Like there aren't a lot of rules. It's just kind of like, I can do this and I can do this. It's not, I didn't feel like it was like too out there. It was just like, all right. But I feel like it could have been condensed. And I wish that this wasn't a whole book of Spencer off by herself again. Like it was put together with the novellas. So at least we could like alternate and see other perspectives and like, or maybe her get back sooner. But yeah, I just was like,
I think that,
but I want to see other people too.
I think both of the comments left here are how we feel. We miss being on detritus for sure. Mm-hmm. And so I think while I liked Cytonic more than Starsight and more than Jessie, I feel like I agree with what Jess is saying. Like I miss being with the other characters. And we see that in the novellas. I think the tricky part about this series is that it feels like it was, and I don't want to try to, I don't know, pull things that Sanderson has said and like try to use it against him or anything, but it feels like it was meant to be a shorter series that they realized couldn't really get everything they wanted in that amount of time. And so they stretched it into, I think it'll be 4 books total, but then you're going to have these 2 novellas plus another novella later, I think this month or next month coming out. But I almost wish that we could have cut some things and then had the other members of the Skyward flight. I wish we could have had them be like their own perspectives, because some of what happens, I think, with like Jorgen and the real Alanique, I think that those things, for my taste, were a little more interesting than what was going on with Spensa, but Spensa's the main character in the main books. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like if we'd mix some of that in, you get here's what's going on back in detritus. But I wonder if there's some limitations with, as far as young adult books go, you tend to not get them as long. And I don't know if that was a contribution to why, we have them. This is shorter than the previous 2, I think.
I mean, sometimes, but like Sarah J. Maas, like her last book in Throne of Glass was like 900 pages.
That's true.
And not like I wanted it to be that long, but I feel like if he would have, so what are the first ones? 500 something ish pages? Like if he could have combined the things of the novellas, at least the first 2, because obviously we haven't read the 3rd one, and this book, because I just, without being spoiler, I just feel like a lot of it could have been explained just shorter. Like it was like we didn't need all of these things to be a journey. Some of it could just be somehow revealed, or I'm not a writer, so I don't know, revealed in a way that doesn't take up so many pages, so that maybe book 3 could have been longer, but still like had it all, and still you could see what's going on with detritus, but also know that Spencer's doing this and get like a nice mix of both. But
I think something I kind of have to question with myself is this is an unconventional approach, and Sanderson's been doing unique, interesting things with having novellas be a part of series. And my first instinct is always, oh, why can't this be in the book? But then I have to ask myself, like, would it really have been better in the book? Would it have messed the timeline up, or would it have affected the pacing? And in this instance, I personally genuinely feel like book 2 and 3 could have benefited from having multiple POVs with the characters back in Detrice, for my personal taste. Not that it would have absolutely been better, but I just miss the other characters in the main books. And I think some of what Spencer is doing in books 2 and 3, like what Jess just said, I almost feel like some of that information maybe didn't need as much time. So one thing I feel slightly different about is in Starsight. I felt like some of the new aliens that we see in Starsight, because Jess was saying she at least appreciated that we still get almost a found family in that one. And for me, it almost felt repetitive. It felt kind of like we're doing Skyward 2.0, except for me, it was like I didn't like this crew as much. So it felt like slightly, we're kind of almost doing flight school again, except for Spence's role is a little different this time. And then in the third one, I think the reason I like Cytonic more than Starsight is because it's very different. So even though I love Skyward and it's my favorite, Starsight felt like a little more middle book. I mean, both Skyward and Cytonic, I think, or excuse me, Starsight and Cytonic have a little bit of middle book, syndrome.
But even, I guess that's kind of spoiler, but even a part of Cytonic almost was kind of repetitive to that whole, like...
Yep.
So...
there's a middle section where I'm like, I don't know if I need this. Like, I wish we could have cut. There's a certain, we'll get into this in the spoilers, but there's a certain part in Cytonic that I think the three of us all were like, I almost feel like you could have taken this out and then just put our other characters back from the Skyward flight back in. Did Cytonic make me cry? There's a part that made me sad, but I was definitely not anywhere close to crying.
I got really sad at the end of Redawn. I was like, oh. So,
and to this about the next novella being with Jorgen, man, I'm feeling the most for Jorgen right now. You know what? Another thing I want to add is I feel like Skyward had a surprising amount of stakes. Like, I picked that up because the feeling is kind of campy and this girl who's got a chip on her shoulder, and then people die and you're like, whoa. And then I'm like, okay, things are serious. Like, this is intense. And then I never felt that worried in books 2 and 3. And then the novellas are like, you forgot to feel how the stakes are, but they're here. And I was like, dang, okay, like I want this back a little bit. So
I agree. Because I'm trying not to do spoilers.
We jump into spoilers. It's been a little over.
I feel like I can't say anything else.
Yeah.
Can we give the spoilers?
Yeah. Let me put a spoiler banner up. Spoilers.
Yeah,
for some reason it looks wrong. It doesn't look like how it's spelled. Do you ever do that?
Yeah, I do that all the time. I'm like, that's it though. That's it.
Like, what it's the word, I think separate and desperate seem like they should be spelled similarly, and they're not, or something like English isn't. Anyway,
English, I don't know.
Okay, so we will be getting into spoilers, which means the chat might also be getting spoilery moving forward. So for those of you who were just looking for general thoughts, you might want to hop off now. But anyway, okay, Jess, you were saying that there's some things that you didn't think you could mention without it being spoilers. So
yeah. Well, I was just going off of, again, with how you felt, and I didn't think about that. It makes sense with Starsight feeling repetitive. That whole Cytonic, I just didn't really like. I also wanted to mention that I have like an asterisk beside my thoughts for Cytonic because I didn't plan to read them all so closely, and then I fell behind, and I literally finished it this morning. So I feel like I was almost kind of burnt out by the time I got to it, where I was just like, I have to read this, not I want to read that. So I feel like that could have played into my thoughts. But so much of it, I felt like, okay, like I loved the like fights, flying and fight scene stuff before. And in this one, I just felt like, all right, I know. Can we just get through this so that maybe I was hoping she would get back to detritus before the end of the book, but the whole like pirate stumbling upon them and then trying to fall in with them and then teaching them how to fly and then competing, I was like, that part I felt so unnecessary. And then almost like, okay, we're doing this a third time. Like, we've already done this on detritus. We did this on Starsight. Now we're doing it here.
Yeah, and I feel like this is the part that the three of us all were like, I don't know how much I needed this. I think it's realistic that she's gonna run into other people, but from a reader entertainment standpoint, I'm like, I don't care. And like, I want to go back to the characters you made me care about in book one. I miss those characters. And I think it was kind of conceptually kind of cool, like this other character having this plan all along to try to get everybody together and everything. Like I liked the concept. I just want to be back in detritus. So it just feels like side quests. And I'm like, can we get back to the main quest? That's what I felt like. So it looks like a similar feeling here.
Yeah.
All of this makes me even more confident in my 2-star because like all of this I agree with, right? Mm-hmm. But then that isn't even my biggest issue with this book. So it's like, it just like piles on top. I agree, Audrey. Okay. I think we already kind of talked about it, but Mbot and Spence's relationship with Mbot in Cytonic felt weird to me. Like, I wasn't a huge fan of their interactions with each other. I think that they had one moment that was like sweet and nice between them, but the rest of the time it was just Spencer being like, oh, stupid Mbot, like, please be quiet, go over there, like, do this thing, made you look, ha ha ha. Like, I hated how Spencer was treating Mbot in this book, and Mbot, like, constantly, he kept repeating the same issues over and over again, and like, I get it, he's an AI that just got emotions, he's like, whoa, what are these things? But like, it was every sentence
I think Mbot is essentially at that phase that a child's at where they go, why?
Yes, and it's so
why?
But
like,
why?
But why? So him constantly being like, how would you rate this poem from 1 to 10? And you know, whatever things he would say. I felt like it feels right for his development, you know, but I get where it at some point maybe is a little frustrating. And yeah, I don't give star ratings, but I would not have given it to Jesse.
I'll tell you why. Here, I'll tell you why. Okay,
Jesse,
I have notes.
Yes.
Right.
My thoughts, I think, are a little less negative than Jesse's.
So my issue are fundamental world building, like core to the series. And that's why, like, I just don't think the series is for me, because I don't know what it is. Like, maybe if this was a fantasy series, it wouldn't bother me, but because it started as sci-fi and became fantasy, there's some things that bother me. So I did not like the setting of just like being on the outskirts of nowhere. I think that the setting of nowhere is strange. I don't really get it as a concept. Why is it called nowhere? Can we at least name it? Just calling it nowhere and being like, oh, we're in the nowhere, but then there's the somewhere. I'm like, can we just like name them at least? Like, does that have to be called nowhere? That just sounds so silly. Like, so the whole time they were like traversing around nowhere. I was like, this is so silly. And then, okay, the slugs. The slugs. Okay, I loved Doomslug in the first series. And like at the end of Starsight, when we find out that the slugs are the hyperdrives, I was like, okay, fine, whatever. Fine.
This is where the novella, I think, would have liked it more. Because
but then
reaches all the cute slugs and then finding out more about the slugs.
But then he takes it a step further and makes the slugs able to transform into inanimate objects, and they are the icons on nowhere. What is that? I was like, okay, so these slugs are hyperdrives and they can become like her father's pin. what? And then the slug poop is the reality Ash? Are you kidding? Like, what was that? It was so silly. And then the Delvers. Oh, it was the Delvers. Why? Okay, the reveal with the Delvers at the end. That was what kept me reading, because I was like, this is a cool concept. Like, what is this? What are the Delvers? Tell me what the Delvers are. That's why I wanted to know so bad. And then when it was just an angry AI that multiplied themselves millions of times.
It was a sad AI.
It was a sad AI.
Sad AI that didn't know how to process
does a
loss.
sad AI go from being a sad AI to being a big old space galaxy eating creature?
Why, Jess? Why are you muting yourself? I need to hear those fantastic laughing.
No, because I'm just cackling.
I know. I need to hear it.
What? Great. So an AI becomes a big space creature that eats planets? What? I was like, this is the big reveal. This is what I was so mad.
Jessie, I feel like you're gonna hyperventilate.
And then, as if that wasn't enough, the ending with Jet becoming like Spencer.
Okay. Okay, wait, hold on. So I have to say, in our chat, just for entertainment purposes, I sent them my predictions, right? And I was
Pretty close.
but I was pretty close. So I was not surprised. Like, so this is what I said. I said, okay, I'm probably way off, but I'm going to make some random predictions that will hopefully be entertaining. I said, I don't actually think I'm onto anything, but my guesses right now are Cytonics are some kind of human created by AI, or people who started as AI but became human over time, which is basically Chet, right? And then I said, like how Mbot kept trying to officially be alive, that would explain how they can teleport and communicate. It would be kind of like signals. That or the slugs eventually become people. So like the slugs being able to transform, shapeshift is what I'm trying to say. And then also like I was pretty darn close. So
you were.
I was.
And that's why I didn't want to say anything.
Just
You were
like back
right
like
on.
the zipper closed mouth emoji.
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't think some of the reveals were that over the top. I thought so I was pretty close. I liked the explanation that the nowhere like leaking, because I know this is not literally I just keep thinking of it as like a black hole, which I feel like you can do a lot with what you decide black holes, how they work and how they affect like time and space. And there is no time and space or whatever. So I like the concept of it leaking and then like mutating people. And then I like the idea of it having an effect on AI also. So for me, I was like, I think this is kind of cool, but Jessie hates it.
Was it leaking? Did it just like go in the air and just like randomly select people that it like, or was it just like I mean, I don't think it's like, I just was kind of like, oh, I thought it was I just thought the reveals of the explanations would be better, and I don't know what that means. Like, I just was like, okay, I guess. But
yeah, so just to read off for anybody wondering, I had been taking notes on my phone as I was reading, and I took a picture where it says Cytonics, this is how it happened. The nowhere leaked into our dimension, and it changed people living near the breach. It made us. So it's almost like how in comic books, there's always like the nuclear radiation or whatever, right? It's always something to that effect, and then it like affects the people near it. So it was the people, it would seem it was the people that were, I think, on planets that were near the nowhere. I think that's like as far as location goes. Jessie. Yeah. Speaking of, just a fun little joke for all of you. So the interview we did, my two lovely friends here who joined me were like, you kept your cool for the intro really well. I wasn't breathing. I don't know what happened, but when I got done asking the first question, I was like, did I even make sense? Like, I didn't even know what I'd said. And like, if you go back and watch, there's a right after I ask the first question, I grab my water bottle and I start drinking, and that is me like hoping he takes a while to answer. And my eyes are like really big as I'm trying to. And I told the two of them, like, just imagine that it was a paper bag, and that's actually how I was feeling. Let's see. I want to make sure there's nothing that
hopefully that clears it up for folks.
I don't think you explained very much.
That makes sense, but like I feel like this one, like I just put 3 stars on Goodreads. And again, I don't know if it was me being burnt out. I just didn't feel like that invested. Like you said, I didn't feel like the stakes were super high. It was just like another journey. I didn't love the setting, and not because like I understand what the nowhere is or whatever. I just was like, the whole time we have to be here. I felt like that could have been a quick little and hop back out, but the whole thing with like Chet, I was like, I just felt really like about a lot of it, and I don't know if that was like I've read too many of these in a row, or just I'm just not wanting solo Spencer adventures and other things. I want Embot and Doomslug back.
I do kind of like that the book is almost self-aware, because even Spencer thinks like, I don't have to watch people die here. I can just go on adventures, and her enjoying that and then feeling guilty for enjoying that and not putting herself in danger. So it's like the book is aware that the stakes aren't the same necessarily. Although, okay, I know, that like Jesse, you didn't love, but did the Embot moment make you sad? The Embot where he's like made you look, and
yes.
That part was
sweet. Right? But see, here's the problem now is everybody's banking on the last book being where everybody gets back together. She's gonna have to go on a side quest to save Embot.
I don't know. I think the Delvers are gonna come to her.
Okay.
I think it's gonna be.
You'll let me know.
I think it's final showdown. All the crews back together, and then we're gonna see everything come back to detritus. That's what I'm guessing. Yeah, I think all of us hoped, and Jesse definitely had thoughts to Chatfish. Jesse doesn't like it.
I'll let the ladies talk about it, because no, I don't like it.
The way I had to go back and like listen to that part, because the whole time I was like, but she was suspicious as well. Like, this guy just conveniently showed up, and so I was like, again, I was just like, I mean, okay, and the whole like, I just never was like, I don't want to say didn't care, but I'm like, can we like the whole we got to go through the hall of the things? I'm like, no, we didn't. You could have gotten that in from like I just wish there was a different way she got all of this like history information, that we didn't have to go through this. It reminded me of something, and I can't think of what it is now. And then that towards the end, I listened to it twice, and I still was like, I mean, okay. No, I just am like, at the end though, I was getting mad. I was like, if she stays here, like I was like, this cannot be it. But I swear, Jesse, if that happens in the 4th one again, I mean, I don't even care if it's a chat. No, she better go back to detritus and stay there. Like, I'm tired of her leaving, unless it's everybody leaving the planet together. She better not go nowhere. I'm sick of it.
I mean, they did. You know what? That's a good point, though. They might hop around a lot, because for those that haven't read the novellas, and then, Jesse, because the one novella focuses a lot on the slugs and them kind of learning how to work with the slugs, so that even those that aren't Cytonic can go to different places, which you then see and read on. So maybe like all of them are going to be jumping around to different places. I can't imagine we're only going to get Spencer separated. I think if they pull apart into different groups, that they'll still be at least paired up or something. And
yeah, I
know that we miss the crew, but I want to also add that I miss the interactions with characters we already know. Like every time that it was an interlude and she like a little bit would talk to Jorgen, I'm like, I like this more than like everything else. And then there was one time where there was one time where it was like, oh, I debriefed Jorgen before I went, and I'm like, I wanted to see you talking to Jorgen again. That's like my favorite moments. I mean, I feel that way about I know we're not going to go into stuff about other Sanderson books, but even in Oathbringer, where it's like these two characters go on some mission together. I'm like, I can't wait to see these characters interacting after moments in Words of Radiance. And then they just like come back after their mission. And I'm like, I wanted to see them on that mission. So I do get sad when we sometimes skip. And I understand if nothing important to the plot is happening, then it's like ends up being kind of pointless. But to me, I'm like, it's never pointless. I always like seeing characters talk to each other. I never get tired of it, really. That's an exaggeration. But let me see what some of you have been saying. Let's see. Yeah. I mean, that was an interesting plot thing because I don't feel like it ever really ended up being that big of a deal. Like I was never really worried about her not having her memories.
I know. I feel like we were supposed to be worried about that.
Yeah. I'm glad we brought him back. Am I the only one that didn't really think he was dead? I'm like, he can't be dead. He's like too adorable.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was, but I was like, oh, because I really enjoyed him in Starsight.
Did you see the drawing of him in the book? In your copies?
He's really cute.
He's so cute. I like how he's like the size of the cup holder.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like there's a seat for me in this ship. That's great. I thought that was cute.
Well,
did you see Jess, did you see him in yours? Because did you have to read it digitally or?
Oh no, I haven't seen him.
Hold on, let me see if I can get it. He's right here. He's super little.
Oh.
He has like his little outfit. Everything is so cute.
Do you, either of you, think that the ending with the whole revelation that like this Jason guy,
Jason
was the first
name.
Jason. That was like the most rushed reveal, and I feel like we could have spent a little bit more time diving into Jason. Because I feel like that was like, what? Like, yeah, Jason, he created the AI and he created the Delvers because, Jason.
Because he died. And
Who's Jason?
He thought he was the first Cytonic, right? Of the human.
Yeah.
And then he tried to put his wife in this AI and then was sad because the AI wasn't really his wife or something. And then that AI turned into Chet.
And turned into Delvers.
Okay, this is one of those stories that you could very easily, like, purposefully describe it poorly and it would sound ridiculous. Jesse already thinks it's ridiculous, but I enjoy it. But I think most fantasy and sci-fi books sound ridiculous when you start trying to describe them,
Yeah. I just for the third book, while there were reveals, I feel like we just didn't get that much for all the pages. It felt like a overextended bonus something. Like I really feel like it could have been a couple chapters, and I
wish we could have combined the novellas with it. It's weird when your main character has like the least interesting plotline. Because I felt like even though she was getting reveals, I'm sorry to compare this again to a different series of his, but maybe other people disagree. But Shallan is nobody's favorite in Way of Kings because she's just getting information, right? Like Kaladin's story is great, and then
I like Shallan. Okay,
I mean, but is she your favorite? Are you always like, I'm so excited to see this word again?
I mean, I didn't love Kaladin in The Way of Kings. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we need to move on. How dare you? How dare you? I'm upset now. No, I'm just.
So anyway,
I'm really upset. And you were scolding me for having dared to say that Interstellar got really out there.
Yeah, I did.
Why are we even friends? No.
Here's the thing though, with like other sci-fi and fantasy, is
Tell
we were
me
talking
that.
about how when you describe it, it could all sound ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But like, at least it sounds cool. Like, I don't know, when I describe
Oh, wait. I was telling my husband last night, you know where this is, I bet you know where this is going, Jesse. I was telling him about your thoughts, and he was like, doesn't she like Leviathan Wakes?
Okay, I did not love Leviathan Wakes. I thought it was average.
We do not have to put in that slander here. That is just so rude, okay?
But like, even Leviathan Wakes, like when you describe it, like, I don't know, at least it sounds cool. Like, I don't know.
Well, Leviathan Wakes has a lot going on, okay? It's don't do that. Don't do
I like that's one of those books that I can never read because I'm always just gonna hear Sean like his frustrations with it, and I just will find it funny. You know?
Have you watched the show?
Even
No, I want to.
Leviathan Wakes, at least like, okay, I know that some of it's like over the top, right? Like it's not
move a planet with their mind.
but at least it like tries to explain stuff in a way that's like kind of grounded in reality.
The nowhere leaked.
But the nowhere leaks. Oh god.
Don't like the,
There
when
is
you
an
say it out loud.
explanation.
I'm like leaked. Like I
Okay,
get it, but
being serious again though, this is so obviously just like a matter of preference, right? Because
Yes.
we were talking about how for me sci-fi that just leans into the fantastical is almost preferable to me, because when you're trying to make it seem realistic, at some point I'm like, but it's not. It's not. Like when you have I mean The Martian, I'm not trying to pick on one of your favorites, but The Martian's one that I'm no, all I'm saying is like at some point the conflict to me, because you're using a lot of things that are real, like real science for a while, but then it just feels like the conflicts or even the solutions end up, it's almost like plot convenience in my mind, because I'm like, you can just make something, as opposed to if you're just being fantastical right away, or not right away, but like if you've just embraced the more fantastical elements and you're like, this is how it works, and then you tell me like the rules and limitations, then I'm like, okay, it's magic, you know? I know you don't agree.
I love The Martian. So it's hard. Because I mean, I find that very grounded in reality. Like that is trying to use
much
like
more
real
so for
science.
sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just preference.
But I'm with you that Skyward was my favorite. The thing that we differ is I think Starsight is where I felt, oh, okay, we're not staying here. We're not staying in this more grounded. We're getting more almost magical at this point. And I was a little bummed because I loved how real Skyward felt, because it felt like a story of like if you, it didn't even have to be detritus. It's just you can imagine if Earth was being it. You know what I mean? Like you can place yourself almost. But then at some point you do have a shift, and so the kind of disappointment that we were going in this direction, which again, it's a subjective, feeling. Some people love that it gets more out there, but I felt that after Starsight, and I'm like, okay, this is where we are. And then with Cytonic, I just kind of was with it, whereas you were not.
Yeah, and I think that Starsight, I enjoyed Starsight quite a bit. I gave that one 4 stars, and I think it had enough going on outside of the reveals that was really cool. Like I loved exploring like some of the alien species and learning about how they viewed humans and how that view kind of evolved through time. And I loved the espionage activity that Spencer was doing as Alanique and kind of sneaking around. I really liked all of that, and I liked that it was still the mystery of like, what are the Delvers before we found out. So I think that there was like enough going on that I was like, oh, okay, this is like really cool. And like some of the themes explored were like pretty deep. So yeah, and I feel like it didn't quite do enough for me in my mind. And I think that this is also where it could differ for a lot of people. It didn't do enough for me in my mind to like prep me to accept these really out there reveals in book 3. So I think if like Elle, like you were saying, like you knew after book 2 that it was going to be like really out there, and it was going to be like, all right, we're in fantasy now. And like in my mind, I was still like, okay, this could still be like sci-fi. I don't know, like I could see it.
It felt more for you like we were exploring alien cultures.
Yeah.
Not so much like magical.
Yeah.
We'll call
I
it
think
magic.
that's
I wanted to get into something slightly different, but Jess, did you have anything to add on these points before we go into something else?
No, I just feel let down because it just didn't feel like it's set like it did at the end, but it didn't feel like it like set up that much for the end, where I feel like the last book may be like very long because he spent so much time with Spencer over here. I don't know. I just feel very about it.
So for this next point, when you're asking about Braid, so I wasn't going to mention her necessarily, but I was going to mention someone attached to her. So in my notes, I put Winzik Moore. And I think, obviously there's kind of those characters go together. Braid has made a bigger deal, I think, than Winzik is. And I wish that we saw Winzik more, because at this point, it's not even that the Delvers are the biggest threat. It's like Winzik is trying to weaponize the Delvers. Mm-hmm. And so they're kind of the biggest threat. And I felt like in Starsight, I would have liked more. Even rereading it, I thought the same thing. Oh, I wish that we got more of this character. And maybe we could have even seen where the way they look down at humans a little bit more. I don't know. I just wanted more of that so that the threat felt a little bit more tangible in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I especially wanted that in this third one because we didn't have it as much in the second. And he's over here with Braid kind of trying to convince the Delvers to go after detritus and the humans and everything. And so I kind of wish we'd gotten more of him. And you see him a little bit in Redon, but I just feel like he's kind of the ultimate bad guy in the end. I mean, even with the Krell being the, prison guards of Skyward, when you find that out, I mean, everything that comes down to the humans are just too aggressive and all of that. It all comes down to, I feel like, this character. And I wish we saw him a little bit more.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way? Yeah.
And where I guess, and I think that's where the lack of like stakes feel like in the second and third book, because I mean, yeah, there are like Spencer in Starsight is obviously doesn't want to be discovered and stuff. And then on this one, she's trying to figure out but it just feels like she's just on these adventures and there's no, what's it like? I can't think of the word. Because like in the first one, obviously it's the Krell, like that immediate threat being called up. And then it's just like these other ones are kind of like, space fight, space fight. Like, I don't, and then you only get like him a little bit here and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that is a guy we should be worried about. And then comes back in Cytonic or like in Redon, I'm like, oh yeah, that is a guy. Like he pops back up. I'm like, oh yeah, remembering that this person. So yeah, he definitely isn't enough of a presence. I feel like if we took out maybe as much of her side quest or space battle and maybe had a perspective with him, maybe yeah, or even in Starsight, him and like Kuna, like seeing, before he does his like takeover. But yeah, he's just very. I almost guy, but over here,
the way that we get, I'm totally spacing on her name. It sounds like, anyway. There's the woman in Skyward who you get in the interludes. And at first you just think, oh, this lady is just an obstacle in the way. And then you find out why she's not wanting Spencer to be a part of the Skyward flight. And you're like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. She's afraid that the same thing's going to happen again. I forget, I'm totally spacing on that woman's name.
Colonel.
Anyway,
Ironsides.
Ironsides, yes.
Yeah, I'm forgetting her first name. It's kind of like a grandma name, I feel. But anyway, she yeah, I mean, you kind of get hints of her and then realize there's more going on. And I almost wish it would have ruined the reveal, I think, in Starsight, because that's the whole thing. Starsight is this, she's a spy, you don't know what's going on, she's learning all these different cultures. And also, a theme I like in Starsight is the Krell are not just these, they're not just random things to destroy. They're people. And I like and you see Hesho, I'm not sure if that's how you say his name, but he even says, like, the first rule you learn as a soldier is that everybody is like you. They're just on the other side. So I like that we see that in Starsight. But I feel like in Cytonic, it would have been interesting to explore a little bit more. I think you always almost get his motivations secondhand, if that makes sense, like through the grapevine instead of, which is fine. I'm not saying we needed him to have a point of view. I just wish it was more than just this guy wants, and I'm not saying it is this simple, but it almost feels like, oh, this guy just wants to destroy anybody outside the superiority who doesn't want to be confined to their rules.
Yeah, I feel like the whole, like you were saying in our voice messages, that Skyward, I won't say as I felt as far as, I don't think it's middle grade. Like, I still think it's YA, but I feel like Skyward felt on the higher end of YA. Like, it was still a younger series, but it felt more mature, maybe because the stakes were higher and they were young people, but they were in this position, like a serious position. And then the side quests just feel more like younger YA, where it's like, I'm off on an adventure. And I'm like, no, but your people are stuck on this planet and they're still in imminent danger. So I need you to get back here and get to business. Yeah. Like, I think that's also because I tend to like, there's like this weird thing where I've been enjoying overall more middle grade books than YA books, because sometimes YA is just in this weird place. But in this one, I love how we started, and we kind of are like, I hope that the last book brings it back up to like that level of Skyward, because hopefully they'll all be back together and finally, trying to make all these solutions and stuff. But yeah, I think that was something else that I felt a little, even though the novellas, I feel like went back. It's weird.
Yeah,
like,
I feel the same. I think Skyward leans, in my opinion, young adults, so the younger end of it, and then Starsight and maybe even more so Cytonic feel middle grade. Like, especially with Mbot, the way that he behaves and some of the jokes and stuff like that, they feel especially young. And I think there's a selfish part of me as an adult, right, that at some point I kind of want it to get more serious, because I think reading a mix of young adult and adults, a lot of young adult books age up with their readers, and then a lot of adult books are already at a more, I don't want to say mature, like these books are immature, but they start already high and then the stakes are raised with each book. And this series almost feels like the first book had the most stakes and it was still young, but we see so much character growth. And then the next couple have felt a little bit younger to me. And I guess I almost wish that they were aging up a little bit, which is unfair, right? Because when I think about this series, I do think that there needs to be books that are for young readers, where if they want to read this whole series in a summer or in a weekend, I remember when I was a kid and you just like marathon a series or something, it makes sense that it's, when you think about in the next few years when they're all out, I'm glad there's a series out there where it's not going to get like so mature that then parents are going to be concerned about the last books or whatever, right? Whatever the case may be. But I think I selfishly wish it was a little bit more leaning to the higher end of young adults as we kept going.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. I saw Ashley from the Bookish Realm. She did this discussion video about like adults who read middle grade and YA, like reviewing those books and like judging them as adults.
Right.
And you're not that audience. And I felt like, oh my God, like this is so true, because like as an adult, like I have to remember, like,
right,
Mbot's behavior in Cytonic, like, yeah, it was annoying to me, but like that's probably really fun for for a teen to read, you know, like they're going to enjoy something so much more than maybe I would. So like, I don't know. It's hard.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just gonna say, I always think of, you know, there are certain movies for kids that also have humor for the adults.
Yeah.
And then there's some movies that are mostly just humor for the younger crowd. Not like younger people's humor is like, just ridiculous or something. But like Shrek is arguably more hilarious if you're older.
Yeah.
But they of course have like the donkey being silly and stuff like that, right? But then there are other kids movies that are definitely for younger people. Or there's like, I mean, I know you love the Marvel movies, but one thing for me is I'm like, I don't want to give away spoilers for Marvel movies, but there's some of them where I'm just like, that they're fine. Like at some point I'm like, when's someone gonna like? That's why I like the movie Logan so much, because it's definitely very adult. That's so good. But anyway, but yeah, I think that's another thing to always consider is like, this isn't we're not technically the target audience. So it's like I have to think about the people that this is for, and not that you can't enjoy it, or not that like we're above it or something like that.
Exactly.
And I do think that every now and then that is what I crave. Sometimes I just want that kind of like silly fun, bring me back to how I was when I was that age. And sometimes I want that. But I think young adult is just such an interesting age range, because the age range is already, it doesn't seem like that much, 12 to 18, or arguably like 10 to 19 or whatever. Doesn't seem like that, but when you think about the difference between an 11, 12-year-old and the difference between them and an 18-year-old, it's so different. And so like earlier you mentioned how long that last Throne of Glass book is, Jess. That series definitely, I haven't even finished that series, but it gets way more mature as it goes on, and like has more adult themes, I would say. And when I say that, I mean like there's like more explicit content and stuff like that too. Not that it's more like complex per se, but there's things that are more so going to be pertaining to your readers at the age they are once they get to that book, if they've been reading it as it comes out. Whereas this, I feel like, I think about when I was teaching private violin lessons and some of my students would talk about what they were reading. And I'm like, this would be a series that I would have so much fun talking to my students about, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that you're right, that we have to kind of remind ourselves of that.
I know.
I want to go back to this comment really quick and just say that is exactly what I'm hoping for.
Yes.
That Defiant, I think is what the last one's going to be called. I mean, even that name, right? Defiant it's like a really awesome last book's title. So that's what I'm hoping, that we get the Sanderlanche will be the entire last book. And I am excited for the next novella, because everything happening with Jorgen is sad. And there was that one moment where Jorgen was like, in this book, where he was like, Spensa, I need you. And she was like all foggy or whatever, and she couldn't really be there for him. That's because his family just died. I was like, I knew that. Yeah. So like, if you know that, having read the novella, you know what I mean? Or you think, I mean, we haven't quite seen the what happened, but
I know that was intense with Cobb and Gran. I was like, oh Lord.
Do you think that, given my like feelings on Cytonic, I would have felt differently if I had read the novellas beforehand?
I think that it would have eased you in. I don't know, because you know how you were saying that you just felt like all of a sudden it was just so over the top. We get so much, we like focus in on the slugs in Sunreach, and it's like pretty adorable actually, because there's different kinds of slugs.
It's so cute.
And some of them like, so do you remember in Cytonic when she's talking to Jorgen, he has cuts on his face? It's because one of the slugs, because he's like, oh, I squeezed one a little too hard. So one of the slugs, instead of being able to hyper jump, it like explodes, and it explodes in his face. And then he gets like all these little cuts, and they call it Boom Slug, right? Instead of Doom Slug.
They're like mind blades, and that's something you see Jorgen work with in Redon. So, and because you get to see him like work on his powers, or like practice and learn more. So I don't think you would have loved Cytonic, but maybe you would have not hated it as much or disliked it as much.
I feel like Alanique already is familiar with the concept of Cytonics, like the real Alanique that Spencer was pretending to be in Starsight. She's familiar with Cytonics. Her planet is like the people that she's around, they understand what Cytonic powers can be. And she's kind of trying to guide Jorgen with his abilities. And so that's where I think maybe it would have felt less like, oh, we can just do whatever now, because that's where you get more of the rules and limitations, which is why I wish it was like all in this book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I understand. I mean, it would have made for a really long book, but
yeah.
Have you all ever read or watched something where it was just like the core of it just you did not like the world building you didn't like, and that's why you didn't like the book?
I have no desire to ever get into the show Lost, because of like at first it's like people get stranded on this island and then all of a sudden it's like all this bizarre, and I'm like, no, I thought it was just going to be a survival thing. I don't want to watch this. Or okay, hold on. Spoilers for the movie The Happening. Okay.
Oh my
Spoilers for that
God.
movie. Just like I'm gonna put my
What
hands.
is that?
You know what? I'm gonna put my hands up like this to.
If someone hasn't seen it, we are saving you some
So,
time.
the big reveal is basically that trees are using their abilities to make people like kill themselves, and because they're like upset at us for not protecting them and being nicer to the planet. And so basically, I'm paraphrasing poorly, but yeah, I'm like, okay, right, that's that movie with Mark Wahlberg.
Yes, it's horrible.
I have not seen that. Nope.
That's one of those movies where I'm like, you know what? I didn't need an explanation. You could have just left it out. We don't know what's causing this.
That right there is how I feel about this series. And I think that there's no turning back when you feel that way. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you have to really. Nobody cares happens to the bees.
I'm trying to think of something I feel like that.
The characters.
And I think that that's it. If, like you all were saying, I think that if the novellas had been combined with this book, I probably would have given it like 3 or 4 stars, because I would have been like, there is enough outside of this to make me enjoy at least like the characters. Yeah. But because Cytonic was only that, that's why it totally lost me. But like I don't think I can like recover from it.
It's just like, I understand and I don't, because I feel like I obviously like Brandon Sanderson, but I do still feel like a lot of stuff can be edited down. I very rarely think super long books deserve or earn their length. So even if you're like, yes, you should read these in between, I feel like it's always risky with like something including really important things to the plot in novellas or like a prequel to make the series cohesive, because not everyone is going to read those extra books.
Yep.
So like, those are good for like bonus or like side, like, oh, you want more things? I wrote a short little story. Yeah. Here's more time with the characters.
And that's why I wonder if, if we're changing the landscape of publishing, and if we were more familiarized with this concept of like there being these extra things, almost like, I don't know, right now it is kind of not everybody's going to read this because it's not the main books, but I wonder if eventually we'll get to a point where it becomes normalized to have these little things in between. I don't know. That's why way earlier you don't want it to be that way.
I would rather have read a longer book.
Yeah, I want it to be, you put all the important things. I feel like novellas or stuff like that are really just like fan bonuses. Like, here's a cute little slice of life, whatever, little cheap or free ebook thing. Like, I rarely think that a novella, I don't know, because it's, especially when you have, this is changing to the Stormlight Archive. You already got a 1,000-page book and I got to read a novella. But but yeah, like with Claire's comment, it's like I just feel like that should be bonus content and not something important to the series. And I don't really want it to become a norm but I could see it becoming a norm because publishing loves to make money. So like, oh yeah, look at this new book. You need to get that one too.
And I usually like, I've never had a like 5-star novella. Like I never feel like I get enough from a novella to make it like that 5-star feeling. So if that's going to become the norm where it's like you have to read novellas, then I'm going to go into them thinking like, this isn't going to be 5 stars.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like I don't want to read a book that I don't think I'm going to rate 5 stars.
I know what you mean. Yeah. And to be honest, I was a little like, I don't know if I want to read these novellas. And I was very pleasantly surprised how much I liked them. But then I was like, that's why when you read Cytonic and I was like, oh, because I know you didn't think you'd have time. And then also everything we just said, where it's not necessarily normalized that you have to read them. But I think they genuinely improve the reading experience. And Read On, I thought was pretty darn solid. I really liked Read On. And going back to what Claire said, I just feel like there's so many important things that happen in those novellas that I guess I almost wish there was more emphasis put on like, I know it's a lot to ask, but I really think you should read these because they kind of just sneakily were like, not sneaky. It's not like it appeared out of nowhere, but everybody's like waiting for Cytonic, and Cytonic's the big thing. And maybe
I didn't even know about those till like right when we started planning our read along. I was like, oh my God, when did these novellas come about? And they're huge, important things. And also, Sanderson's novellas are of course longer than normal people's novellas. So you're like, between those two, that was another 500-page book almost in the middle. So like that should have just been, you should have just made a little bit longer and made Cytonic all of this info, because what would you guess is the percentage of people who are reading the series? How many do you think read the novellas?
You know, I think it's going to be higher than it normally would because Sanderson fans do tend to go, because I mean, a lot of people pick up the novellas in Stormlight. I personally think the novellas in this series are far more significant than the novellas in Stormlight. Like if somebody was like, hey, I'm a really, really busy person and the series is really long, do I have to read, like Lift's story? I would be like, I mean, you're okay. But this one, I just felt like it was so important. Do you think that part of it is that we're trying to keep the main series like just Spencer in just kind of one point of view? Because I think it's not that uncommon for YA books to have multiple points of view, excuse me. But it feels like we're trying to just stick with her
for the main books. Yeah, because obviously when we see that the other one's going to be with Jorgen, and it's like, but we would love to see those other people in the main ones. Like it could still be from their first person POV, and Spencer could still be the majority. But I feel like you could still have thrown that in. And what Claire said also, I hope it's not the norm because fantasy is for so long. Yes,
and
please.
What I think of is the Throne of Glass series. We're going to go right back to it. We've already talked about it a couple times. Tower of Dawn. I feel like the Tower of Dawn has such mixed reviews, but that is the one Kale's story, right?
Yes. What are you going to say about it?
What are you going to say about it? I actually enjoyed it, but that was like a lot of people's least favorite because it's like a totally separate thing. It's not Selena's story. And I actually feel like I would have, if the novellas had been like presented as like, here's a full-length novel from Skyward flight characters, like kind of like how Tower of Dawn was in the Throne of Glass. Like you had to read Tower of Dawn.
I think part of it is just the timing, because when they release the novellas, I think they are going to release it as a bind up, like it's one book.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I mean, so going back to what Claire said about how it gets confusing, that'll be kind of weird to have Skyward, Starsight, part of this bind up.
Don't read the
Then-
last part.
Then Cytonic, then the end of the bind up from over here. You know, like
Yes.
I feel like there's
Oh.
already enough confusion in fantasy series with reading
Mhm.
orders. So
Oh my gosh. Do you mean like they're literally going to be in one book? They're supposed to be.
I think it's gonna be a bind up because he said in
Yeah.
the interview too that there's gonna be like cool, fun extras in there where they like his first attempts at writing Spensa and I've seen
saw it
the image
on
of like the
Amazon.
three
Yeah.
of them, the three
Yeah,
main
I
characters.
just saw the cover and was like, actually, I would read that
Yeah.
over like individual. No, I don't know why. I just don't like novellas. Like, I don't like gravitate towards.
Yeah.
I don't usually
I
either.
rarely like unless it's just like, the book itself, like someone publishes a novella, but I rarely, if it's in a series, I'm like, I just kind of take it as like, here it is if you want to, but you don't need to. And this one I definitely felt like you need to. And then that ATM's comment, it says they weren't originally planned, which would make sense, but
does it make sense that really important things happen?
yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense if they weren't, because he obviously is writing this only from Spence's point of view. So then if people complain, it's like, okay, well, let me put this in here. But I still think it should have been with Cytonic, should have been all of this in a chunky book.
So, question.
I would have read it.
Speaking of like unconventional approaches and things that end up being a little different than we're expecting, I haven't read the actual books, but I know in A Song of Ice and Fire, you have George R.R. Martin had this dilemma where he was like, I have so much that needs to happen with all these characters, so I'm going to write book 4 from these characters' point of view, and then I'm going to go back and do the same thing from these other characters.
Yes,
I think part of a lot of people don't like books 4 and 5 because they're like, they just didn't like how to go about it. But with this, do you feel like, because we keep saying we almost wish it was all one book, but a lot of it is happening essentially simultaneously. So do you think it would have felt strange, like timing wise and pacing where we're with, I mean, I feel like it wouldn't really because Spensa isn't really experiencing time the same way.
Yeah, that's what no, so I don't think so. No. I think it would have worked.
I wish that they had released the novellas as like a full-length novel from Skyward Flight's perspective and pushed back the release of Cytonic almost so that you could like say this is a part of the series, this is book number 3, and then Cytonic is like book number 4. And I would have picked up the novellas because I would have been like, okay, it's like a part of it. Like, it's not just like 3.2, 3.1. It's like book number 3. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. This is personal preference, and I haven't even read the novellas, so what do I know? But I don't know. Yeah. I just feel like how they were marketed, unless you're like hearing word of mouth, like they are required reading. Like, I'm not going to pick them up.
Yeah, that's why I almost feel like, I don't know. Because I hear people say sometimes, like, you have to read Warbreaker before you read Words of Radiance. Or you definitely before Oathbringer and stuff. And I'm like, you don't have to. You don't have. So it's like, you almost don't know how much you want to be that person insisting, like, no, you really do need to read these.
Yeah.
But this is like the one time that I really, truly am like, I feel like it's important enough information in the novellas. But I do want to add, of course, that we're only getting part of the story. So once the next novella is out and then the last main book is out, I'm assuming it's just going to be the last one. Once those are out, I wonder if we'll feel differently because we're only able to comment on what we have so far, which isn't the whole story.
Yeah.
And we can also, I mean, we all agree, like, oh, I wish it was just like a part of the book. But I wonder if it was just a part of the book, if we would have been like, oh, the pacing was weird. I almost wish there was like, we might complain, both ways. So hopefully it doesn't come across like we're insisting we know what would have worked better.
I surely do not.
I don't know.
I think it's just a personal preference as of right now. Mm-hmm. Cytonic had a lot of important information, but I think the stakes and the Skyward Flight and these other characters that we missed, if we could have had them together, I think it maybe would have improved. I like the concept of if we could have tied Sunreach in with a little bit of Starsight and Redawn And Read On is interesting too because it's Alanique. It's the person that Spensa is pretending to be. So I feel like if we had gotten her, like maybe even, I don't want to, you know what, I'll stop before I'm like, she's exactly where everything should have been. But let's see, I think the novellas being part of the books is yeah, and especially because he was partnering with someone to write those.
Yeah.
So I wonder if scheduling wise, he just, I don't know. Do you think in future, because, you know, we always get like new editions of books every few years, it feels like, if they're popular enough. Do you think there will eventually be an edition that like combines them?
I don't know. But I really like what Jesse said too, even if like not, if in practice, because it could be not, it doesn't work well to put them in with the books, even if they just would have been like, because I mean, together, I read the e-copy, so I don't know, but it said like 200 something pages. So together, they were almost like a normal, they could have just made that the third book, like you said, push Cytonic, and then maybe it just needed to be 5 books. And I felt like, I don't know. I'm not the expert. I'm not a writer, but I just don't love the setup of how it is now.
I think, but going back to what was said earlier, it just, I hate to say this, but it really does feel like it used to be in a planned trilogy that they realized there's too much to do, so we need to stretch it out, and that's kind of what it felt. It felt kind of like that. It felt like what was originally a trilogy that couldn't quite be a trilogy, so we're making it 4, but it turns out there's even more information, so then we need to.
And I think
more
like it has, like, I can see why they had to stretch it out, because there's so much that they're trying to do with this, right? Because I'm trying to think, like, if you took out the Delvers, we could still have like fundamentally the same kind of story and have Winzik as the main antagonist, and he's trying to weaponize something else. It doesn't have to be Delvers. And we could have had all the same themes throughout Skyward and Starsight. We could have been exploring more of the Krell and them being like these prison guards of the like, all of that stuff is so cool. Like, the addition of Delvers feels like it's like trying to, and now it's kind of the main focus right after Cytonic. It's like the main focus is like the Delvers. So I almost wish it wasn't like that thing with the Delvers, and I'm biased because I don't like the Delvers reveal, but if the Delvers were out of it, we could still essentially have the same series and same story, and it could be like so much more. I don't know. It just,
I think it could be really interesting if it was taking the cultures of the other aliens and their views of humans, and this like propaganda of like, well, the humans are just aggressive, they're going to try to harm us, and they really leaned into that. And so you have the humans who are they have to fight at this point because so they don't go extinct and they're not hurt, but that being used against them, and then they're trying to like convince, because you see that a little bit in Read On. I said that weird. Read On. You see them with Alanique's people and like the bonding with Alanique and the humans, and like her culture is interesting too, because anyway, I think that they do tackle kind of what you're talking about in that one. And you know what? Maybe not to say that I dislike your idea, because I feel like I probably would have preferred that as well. Maybe we're just too basic. Maybe like it is really different, and the Delvers concept is really creative, but maybe because we do like those stories that if you start us feeling like it's more of like, hey, like, what if aliens attacked us? If you really make us feel like that's me, and then at some point you're like, this isn't me or anything I relate to.
But what y'all are talking about, I feel like I would have enjoyed that too, because it kind of been more like political maneuvering kind of, and like all the different people and like whatever organisms. What are words? But I almost feel like he's almost trying to do like an epic space opera, but a YA. And so it is like trying to do too much in like the limited whatever amount of books, or if it was planned to be shorter, and with just easier explanations, because it's not some big planned long series where you can explore all these, because they usually get into all these different things of creatures and time travel and all this stuff. And I feel like if it could have, like maybe took out one or two of these things and just kind of focused on the humans being trapped on the planet and the other people of the superiority, and it was kind of like a politicking thing and like, how are we going to get out of here without even needing the Delvers or explaining the history of the AI or something. I don't know. I feel like it was just like he had all of this and he needed to kind of bring it down.
Yeah, I was actually, so this comment is perfect for what I was going to add to what you just said. I think that's us being adults. And being like, I want the political maneuvering. And, like, I feel like for a younger audience, it's like, whoa, this is cool. And I don't know why I made like young people sound like that. That's really cool. But I think that, I mean, because we want, like, we're like, I want the like slower moving examination of culture and prejudice and things like that. And those, not that you can't have that in young adult and middle grade books. It's just, I think that, like I said, that's the adult reader aspect of, I mean, we literally are adult readers. I don't know why I said it like it's a facet of our personality.
And that's why, like, I think Kayla's comment is like one of the most important ones, because at the end of the day, like, the target audience like loves it. And that's awesome. That's so cool.
I mean, I think that's awesome. That's a nice, unless you all have anything else to add, I think that's a nice place to kind of leave it. That this is, I think, a fantastic series for the Mayana. Hello. I think it's great for, well, get out of here. What are you doing? Just kidding. You can be here. I think it's a great series for its age range. And I think that with so many adult readers reading young adult, that it's an age range that it's like, it's almost like we don't have very many books in that age range for the actual target audience nowadays, because they keep aging up for the blabbermouths like us that are like, I want this, and to kind of diss ourselves here. But I mean, I miss there being YA books for kids. I think that we need that. That needs to be a part of the age range / genre, however you want to think of it. And I think that this series is absolutely that. It's just gonna have some aspects to it that perhaps we as adults are gonna wish were a little different. Yeah, we'll see. I am excited for book 4.
I have high hopes for, the next novella I definitely think will be great. And then I have hopes that we're going to get the crew all back together for the final one, and that'll be a great ending. So
I want to mention really quick that in Cytonic, even though she didn't really have her memories. Okay, sorry. I know I said we were probably going to wrap up, but I want to add her somewhat losing her memories was a bit of a bummer, because one of my favorite things when characters are separated is when they think back to their friends and loved ones. And so she it was built into the story for her not to. But I really liked when she was thinking about, is it Kimmelin, right? Mm-hmm. Where thinking oh, this is something that Kimmelin would have said, well, bless your stars too. And
I love her.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh man, if we don't have those characters, I wish we at least had more of those moments of Spencer thinking about them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's all. Yeah. I miss the other characters. I can't wait for the next novella because I want to see what happens to poor Jorgen. And I also want to see, that last battle. I'm excited.
Yes.
I like it. Don't be a Captain Hook. I love that.
Let us know your thoughts. I mean, I know obviously this will go up later for people who weren't in the actual chat and here with us live. So let us know your thoughts. I'm sure there's things that while we were in the middle of just bouncing off each other that we forgot to mention. There's in the notes, I was kind of proud of myself because I wrote, is Chet like Mbot? Because I was like, they have similar speech patterns and the way they talk is similar. So then I was like, I feel like Chet, I don't know. I just got this vibe that Chet was somehow like Mbot with the whole being an AI initially or whatever.
I would not have picked up on that. That was a very big surprise to me.
Anyway, okay, I think officially wrapping up. We're almost at an hour and a half. But anyway, yeah, any last things to say, friends? Jess and Jessie?
Nope.
It's good.
Jess got her
That's it.
I got
like
my
10 minutes
feelings
of
out. I still do recommend the series.
Okay, thank you, friends.
it.
Thanks everybody who joined.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.